Hello, students. This is my friend Joanne Kerr, Dr. Joanne Kerr, and the two of us are practicing what I would like to see happen in your writing groups. You'll get some instruction for something I'd like you to do while you're watching this video, and then we'll just proceed. All right, so I'm going to read this for you, and then, all right, we'll proceed from there. Once again, the Trib has engaged in teacher bashing. As a teacher educator and advisor to approximately 20 teacher education students per semester at IUP, I take exception to Eardley's September 6th article, assuming there must be grade inflation for education majors at state system schools. Among my current advisees, 2 have worked for multiple semesters to reach the state's required 3.0 grade point average. 1 has finally succeeded, well into her junior year, which means she will need more than 4 years in order to complete her degree. The other, also a junior, has still not reached that point. It is by no means automatic that students are admitted to teacher education. Those advisees who have maintained a 3.0 or higher have received good grades from departments in every college in the university. They have taken courses in the sciences, mathematics, social sciences, fine arts, history, English, and health physical education. In addition, they have taken courses in their majors, in my case, English, in writing, literature, and pedagogy. Given the number of departments education students take courses from and the number of faculty they encounter, it would take a conspiracy of epic proportions for grade inflation to be as rampant as the Trib article suggests. Beyond college grades, students must pass several standardized tests to be admitted to teacher education at all, and then to demonstrate proficiency and content knowledge in their subjects. We should not be suspicious of students who graduate with an education degree and Pennsylvania certification. We should applaud their efforts.
What is that?
It's my phone.
Helen, would you read the first paragraph for me again?
Okay. Once again, the Trib has engaged in teacher bashing. As a teacher educator and advisor to approximately 20 teacher education students per semester at IUP, I take exception to Eardley's September 6th article, assuming there must be grade inflation for education majors at state system schools. Among my current advisees, 2 have worked for multiple semesters to reach the state's required 3.0 grade point average. 1 has finally succeeded well into her junior year, which means she will need more than 4 years in order to complete her degree. The other, also a junior, has still not reached that point. It is by no means automatic that students are admitted to teacher education.
Okay, thank you. I like the opening, that sentence, I think, that short sentence.
Focus this on you. I want you.
I like the opening. I think that first short sentence is effective. And I think also your second sentence concisely summarizes the point that you want to make. I like the fact that you're using evidence from working with students, in particular your advisees, to point to the fact that this 3.0 grade point average, which pre-service teachers need to maintain, isn't something that's just a given. I think that story works well. As far as any revisions that you might want to make at this point, I'm thinking about readers who might not necessarily have read this piece that you're referring to, but who might nevertheless be interested in going back to it, or at least have been interested by what you've stated here. I'm wondering if there might be a little bit more about the requirements for teacher education that could be related to the point that the article makes, which also I haven't read, so maybe I'm a little at a disadvantage here to show the connection between grade inflation and the point that you're making by referring to the 3.0 minimum that students need to maintain. So does there have to be a bit more context for a reader who may not necessarily be familiar with the article and with some of the requirements?
I think I need to ask you, what else would you say? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me.
Let me take a look
Okay.
at,
There.
I think perhaps in the sentence in which you state that in the article there must be grade inflation for education majors, I'm wondering that if most readers would default to just specific course grades, talking about grade inflation, and that maybe there just needs to be something stated there about the requirement, the minimum GPA requirement that all education majors must maintain. That could probably go in maybe before your examples of your advisees.
So the required 3.0 grade point average, move that higher?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What about my saying that one student has taken a long time to reach that and another one still hasn't? Do you think, you said you thought it was good that I wrote about working with students, but do you think this is okay?
I think it is, but do you want to just make clear that if in fact there were grade inflation, that probably these students wouldn't be working perhaps an additional few months or an additional year?
So grade inflation would have moved them into teacher education earlier.
Right. And I think, too, that maybe if you would want, that you could problematize the whole notion of the concept of grade inflation. What is that exactly? As though I think for the public who aren't teachers and who don't engage in assessment, there's this thought that grading is purely objective, and that there is no, that there is some sort of standard against which all students are measured and their performance is measured, when in effect that's not the case.
So grades are never really objective.
Right, right.
That was a little bit the reason for my adding that they have to take these standardized tests as well. So that if someone becomes certified, they not only have had at least a 3.0 or likely higher than that, but they also have taken this non-institutional designed test that will demonstrate that they're qualified based
that would
on that.
Seem to counter the idea of grade inflation if students are passing. I think in particular you would want to look at Praxis 2, that Pennsylvania certification means that candidates must take and pass Praxis 2, which is a test of primarily content. Yeah, there is some pedagogy, but it's primarily content.
Do you think people will know this word pedagogy? Should I change that?
I think that's a good question. Yeah, I think
in
maybe
writing, literature, and teaching methods.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right, and one last thing. Now that I know that IUP did not participate in this survey, and you know why IUP didn't participate in the survey, should I add something about that? You know, IUP is described as one of the schools who did not participate. This is why.
I think it would be, I think it would add strength to the editorial, to the letter to the editor by providing the reasons that IUP did not participate, given that some readers might think that the institution is trying to hide something or is overly concerned about scores.
And you said that the research methods that this group was using were questionable. Do you remember in what way?
I am not sure, but I think in general, if they're looking, if I'm correct, and they're looking just at course syllabi, those course syllabi really don't indicate what students are actually learning. It's what's being taught, but it's no indicator that students are learning what's being taught. So if they're looking just at course syllabi and looking for perhaps gaps in the course of study, I'm not sure that that is adequate evidence to
well, how are they matching the course
judgments.
syllabi to grade point averages that they seem to have had access to?
That I'm not sure about.
That doesn't make sense.
I'm not sure if they have access to grades.
Well, how did they show they have access to something because they showed a table where they showed the number of students who graduate in education who graduated with honors versus number of students who graduate in other fields with honors, and the education students outnumber those in other fields who graduate with honors. So they
assume that that's grade inflation because of
yes,
those numbers.
Yes, that's the assumption.
Okay, isn't that overgeneralizing?
I think so.
Isn't there a flaw?
I think it's flawed, and I think
do you want
the numbers of majors might skew that also. I presume that there might be more education majors on a lot of the state system campuses than there are majors in other fields.
That's true as well. So I guess the question is, would you want to go into that methodology a bit to not only find fault with by pointing out teacher bashing, but also pointing out the problems with the methodology and some of the conclusions that are drawn?
Okay, so how are they linking the syllabus and GPA in order to draw the conclusions that they're getting?
If I'm correct that they are using course syllabi, and I thought that was my understanding, that they in part they were looking at course syllabi.
Who would Jeff know that on campus?
Yes, Jeff Fertangeli would have, because he has all of that data. He's got Praxis pass rates. He has course grades.
Yeah, right. So
he has all of that.
He's got his finger on everything. Okay, he may be somebody that I need to check back with to find out more about the group that did this. But it's in the Trib. It's on the front page. It's below the fold, but it's on the front page.
Yeah.
And the Trib has this thing about teachers to begin with.
Well,
and it just
do you want to link it to the bigger picture?
Peeves me.
The bigger picture of using teachers as scapegoats in whatever way possible today. And if it's to point to their inadequacies as pre-service teachers, to noting the causes for some of the ills of society, it's part of, I think, this larger narrative about inadequate preparation of teachers, teachers who are not qualified. So it kind of fits in that bigger picture too.
It does. We can't just bash the teachers. We have to bash the institutions that prepare them.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might add strength too. But I think really one of the most important points will be to note the flawed reasoning behind the conclusions that are drawn. There's some logical fallacies, I think, in place.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.